Coming up in Magic the Gathering's latest set, the name of which YouTube doesn't want me to say in the first minute of this video, we are getting 4 brand new Commander Precons. And today, we're looking at Revenant Recon, a blue and black list focusing on the keywords Surveil and Graveyard interactions. Our box legend for the deck is Mirko, Obsessive Theorist, a revisit of the character Mirko Vosk from Dragon's Maze. This version of Mirko is a 3-mana 1/3 vampire detective, the perfect creature size. He also has flying and vigilance in blue and black, and says, whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on Mirko. At the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature card with power less than Mirko's from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Finality counters are something new we've just recently seen. They're counters that give the property if this creature would die, exile it instead. Meaning, it's a lot harder to loop the same creature over and over. But not impossible, mind you. We could be removing counters from creatures like with a power conduit or a nesting ground to ensure you're not entirely out of ways to recur specific baddies from the graveyard. But Mirko is very exciting, to me at least. It's important to note that his reanimation ability cares about power rather than the number of +1/+1 counters on him. Meaning, equipment like Blackblade Reforged or Nettlecyst could very quickly have you returning the biggest and baddest cards from your yard. And while he does trigger off of Surveil, he does not in fact surveil on his own, meaning you likely want to put a lot of support in the 99 for this mechanic, to not only pump his power, but get powerful targets into your graveyard to begin with. A lot going on here, believe it or not. Of course, Mirko isn't the only new legend in the deck though. We're also graced by Marvo Operative. This 5-mana Octopus Rogue is a 1/8 friend. They read, whenever Marvo attacks, clash with the defending player. To clash, you each reveal the top card of your library, and the player with the highest mana value wins. Then you each get to decide whether you want to put the revealed card on the top or bottom of your library. Whenever you win a clash, draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value 8 or less for free. This commander is very interesting because there are very few ways to clash in Magic, meaning this becomes far less exploitable than originally thought. As an attack trigger, you really need to work to earn the payoff, but gosh, is that payoff big? Free spells are never broken, right? Especially when they can cost up to 8 mana. This means a deck with Marvo at the helm wants big mana spells, not only to win clashes, but to cast. Fortunately, the spell doesn't have to be just an instant or sorcery, so you can include fishy friends like Serpent of Yawning Depths or Spawning Kraken to make your 1/8 not so lonely when swinging for the fences. But which one of these commanders is better? Before we take a look at the Precon as a whole, remember to like and subscribe for more Precon upgrades and deck builds on the channel. First, shout out to Wizards for finally caving to fan feedback and ensuring that this round of Precons contains some real reprint value. Everyone wants their staples to be readily available, and believe it or not, this round of Precons gives us exactly that. Like putting the game-ending Rise of the Dark Realms in this deck. This 9-mana mass reanimation spell is currently $15 and is a classic game over spell in the format. But it's not the only winner in the deck. Reanimate, Toxic Deluge, and the first ever reprinting of Necromancy appear in this list too. These are all between $8 and $12 and are legitimate format staples in black. Absolutely overjoyed to see that people get their hands on these. Animate Dead, Phyrexian Metamorph, and Doom Whisperer, all over $5, come packed in the default list too. If you're ever planning on building a black deck, then this list comes with absolutely everything you could ask for as a real toolkit of must-have spells. Now, reprints aren't the only value in the box. We also have several brand new exclusive cards coming in the deck, like my personal favorite, Case of the Shifting Visage. This is one of the new Case enchantment types. For 3 mana, by default, it lets you surveil at the beginning of your upkeep. That's great for Mirko's trigger. And when it's solved, by having 15 or more cards in your graveyard at the beginning of your end step, including the turn you play it, it says whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell, copy it. Copying a creature spell on the stack makes a token copy of it, but it will not trigger token doubling effects, so keep that one in mind. But I love clones, and this turns everything into 2 times everything. It's basically Volo Guide to Monsters triggers, but without having to craft your deck around it. You'll basically always get the 15 cards in your graveyard eventually, but even more quickly if you accelerate that with some self-mill or mechanics like Surveil. This is everything I want in a card, and I'm going to pick up like 3 copies of it. It's so good. Also new to the deck is Counterpoint, a 5-mana counter spell. It also lets you cast a creature, instant, sorcery, or planeswalker spell from your graveyard with mana value less than or equal to the countered spell's mana value for free. I actually really like the trend of making 5-mana counter spells fun and unique with a ton of value. From Spell Swindle to Access Denied to Counterpoint, if your opponent is holding up 5 mana, prepare to get rocked. But this is interesting and unique as this allows you to cast the selected spell from your graveyard for free at instant speed, meaning you can do this and untap with your reanimated creature to attack, or get your upkeep triggers, or cast a sorcery on someone else's turn. There are some scenarios where that is very, very good and very, very broken. These 1-2 punch counter spells, the insult on top of injury spells, are great if you're playing at a level where your opponent will never see it coming. Next up is the new Watcher of Hours. This 6-mana 6/6 Sphinx has flying and ward 3. It also has Suspend to 6 for 2 mana, meaning you can cast it on layaway if you're patient enough. But it also says whenever you remove a time counter from Watcher of Hours while it's exiled, you surveil 1. This is a neat little way to get an additional surveil on each turn, and in this deck that's fuel for Mirko and fuel for your graveyard. The reason I like him so much is that Suspend recently got a big glow up thanks to the Doctor Who cards like Amy Pond or the 10th Doctor, helping accelerate the casting of Suspend spells significantly. This big beefy flyer can be some card quality, card selection on an evasive, hard to remove beater for just 2 mana and a turn or 2. While in this list it's more useful suspended than not, I can see him sneaking into a few other decks that can exploit what can essentially be a 2 mana 6/6 beater. Then there's the incredible Unshakable Tail, and unshakable he is. This 3 mana 3/2 zombie detective says, whenever it enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. Whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, create a clue token. And finally 2, sacrifice a clue, return it from your graveyard to your hand. This guy is amazing. He's going to fit in just about any deck that self-mills. From Sir Conrad to Sidisi Brood Tyrant, this thing will be cranking out clue tokens, filling graveyards, and you can never be rid of him. Unshakable. The utility in just creating a few extra clue tokens to sink unspent mana into is fantastic. And in a deck with multiple surveil triggers where you want creatures in your graveyard, you'll have more clues than you know what to do with more often than not. Remember when I mentioned a card like Nettle Cyst pumping Mirko's power? Yeah, it's this guy that's going to make that a little nutty. As always though, if you have repeatable sources of making clues or food or treasures, you won't find Academy Manufactor far behind. It's a way to turn this kind of repeated value up to 11. He's what I would consider an enabler and a payoff on a single card that, naturally, makes it a lot better than some people would initially give it credit for. Then there's Eye of Duskmantle, a big 7-mana flying lifelinking Eye. This 3/8 is everything you want in a surveil-focused deck. It says, you may play lands and cast spells from among cards in your graveyard you've surveilled this turn. If you cast a spell this way, you pay life equal to its mana value rather than its mana cost. If you've ever dumped life into Bolas's Citadel, you know exactly how strong this big goofy goober can get, provided you're surveilling regularly. Surveilling lands is incredible, since you don't have to draw them, but don't lose your land drops. And while that casting cost is a lot to ask at 7 mana, it does let you immediately cast anything you surveilled this turn. The eye doesn't need to see you surveil it, just know that it was surveilled this turn. That can set you up for some great plays where you could be paying life for multiple spells and quickly refund that mana value. If you're in a surveil-heavy deck like this default list, this is one of the biggest bombs you could hope for. Very, very cool. Lastly, we have Final Word Phantom, a 3-mana 1/4 spirit detective with flash and flying. He says, simply, during each opponent's end step you may cast spells as though they had flash, with a nice little shout out to Columbo in the flavor text to boot. We're all used to these kind of effects, casting spells at instant speed, costing us 4+ mana, and being on enchantments like Leyline of Anticipation or artifacts like Vidalcan Orrery. Well, now it's on a body. Not quite the same, as you can't flash in a blocker during combat, but if you want to give your creatures a kind of haste, or hold up mana to counter a spell while still being able to develop your board state, this guy's great. I really like him in any creature-based decks with blue in it, because it does mean you can give your creatures a kind of haste, or get upkeep triggers without risking a creature being removed, or dodge sorcery speed targeted removal. Even better for, again, allowing you to cast sorceries at instant speed. Being able to reanimate, or even better, Rise of the Dark Realms at the end of an opponent's turn, that's super good. Look out for this guy making waves in the format, maybe even in higher power levels too. I know I've got my eye on him. So with two awesome options for commanders with two different directions but a common theme of using the graveyard as a resource, which is better, Marvo or Mirko? Let's take a look at how we can update this list to make it Mirko's deck. There are a lot of ways we can take advantage of Mirko's various triggers. Making him bigger via Surveil or other means is great because he's an evasive attacker with Vigilance, pulling double duty on defense, while also reanimating high power threats from the graveyard. But there's some nuances we could exploit here. We could try to put more Surveil in the deck, or we could supplement that with self-mill and power boosting methods. Or we could just work with Mirko as is. The big benefit of reanimating for power rather than mana value is that there are some strong cards with 0 power. Like Clones, my favorite. There are several in the deck already like Phyrexian Metamorph and Vizier of Many Faces, but as an expert on all things clone, there are some more ways we can work with this. Like including Clever Impersonator. 0 power, but it doesn't have to become a creature. It can become the best thing on the battlefield like an enchantment, just like Metamorph can become an artifact in play. That versatility is fantastic. Auton Soldiers is another good option, giving us not only possibly another Mirko, but multiple copies of whatever we copy on attack thanks to Myriad. With cards like Massacre Worm and Ravenous Chupacabra in the default list, this could be absolutely back-breaking for some opponents. And of course, Spark Double, now a reasonable price thanks to a printing in Ravnica Remastered, could be coming in as any creature or planeswalker, or another Mirko with an extra counter on him from the start. That is very, very good. Graft creatures work here too, like Cytoplast Manipulator. Mirko can be reanimating this the turn it comes down, ensuring you can untap and snag an opponent's creature. Graft does let you move +1/+1 counters onto opponent's creatures if you so choose. This can have you stealing an opponent's commander, if you're nasty like that. But one of the biggest concerns I see from folks is about the finality counters Mirko puts on whatever you reanimate. No one wants to lose a good creature forever, so how can we compensate for that? Fortunately, there are a few solutions. Feign the Broker, for instance, can turn those finality counters into treasure tokens each turn. An instant speed solution, it means that we can remove the counter to prevent the creature from dying the turn we reanimated it, as the trigger happens in our end steps. In addition, Feign can let us put more counters on creatures we control if we sacrifice creatures, or allow us to sacrifice artifacts to make creatures, while providing us an outlet to do this multiple times. I think that this guy does wonders in this deck. So does Soul Diviner. A simple 2-mana zombie wizard, we can tap him, remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker to draw a card. With him, Mirko, and any creature to reanimate, it's a bonus card every turn. Again, at instant speed. What's not to love? And maybe my favorite solution is Power Conduit. I have loved this goofy artifact forever, and now with finality counters, it's proving its weight in gold. You can turn any counter on any permanent you control into a charge counter or +1/+1 counter. Another fantastic instant speed way to kill finality counters and pump Mirko's power for bigger reanimation. Wins all around. While Surveil is a great source of self-mill for the deck, it happens in small pieces, only 1 to 2 cards at a time. What if we want more options in our graveyard faster? Well, I am always a fan of Mesmeric Orb as a way to get ammo into your yard. It's a lot of mill, a lot of the time, and while normally folks see it as wasted cards, Mirko ensures that our creatures at least are never wasted. Cemetery Tampering is another great option for self-mill, giving you the choice to mill 3 cards on your upkeep. That would, honestly, be good enough in a lot of decks, but as long as you can have 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you get to free cast the spell you hid under it when it entered the battlefield. Great utility on a single card. We could also tutor cards to our graveyard for Mirko to reanimate. Vile Entomber, and Auric Loremage are ways for us to pick and choose what's in our graveyard and ensure we've got to select utility creatures ready to go. There's the added option of putting spells with flashback in our graveyard too, like Otherworldly Gaze or Deep Analysis, just to give us access to even more utility. Did you know that Search for Azcanta was errated too, officially to become Surveil now? This 2-mana enchantment is a good way to get another Surveil trigger in your deck on your upkeep, while also having the option of flipping into a land that lets you grab non-creature, non-land cards from the top of your library. Useful in this list. And I would really recommend removing bad lands like Reliquary Tower and Myriad Landscape and Temple of the False God in favor of the new Surveil land Undercity Sewers. Normally, I'm not a big fan of lands that enter tapped, but as this one works with your commander, it's definitely worth a slot in the list over any other of these poor quality non-basics. This then leads to the question of what gets cut for these new cards. What from the existing list doesn't fit our game plan? Let's start with Ransom Note. I don't like this in any of these decks, but it's most usable in this one with scant few ways to actually surveil. Fortunately, we're adapting the deck where it's not necessary to surveil, so it makes a good replacement. Then there's the new Foreboding Steamboat. I don't hate this card. It's got some options for mass removal with each player exiling 2 non-token, non-vehicle creatures until it leaves the battlefield. For 5 mana, that's like a super Oblivion Ring. On attack, you can choose one of those creatures to die under mysterious circumstances while on the boat. It's a cute card, but we can't reanimate it, and it doesn't mill us, so it's a sinker, not a swimmer. The deck's got a pair of big, beefy creatures that are just okay in this version of the list. Overseer of the Damned and Sphinx of the Second Sun. They can definitely do some fun things, but at power 5 and 6, the chances are that we aren't cheating them out, but casting them for their mana values. At 7 and 8 mana, that's likely not happening often enough for us. Amphin Mutineer, Final Word Phantom, and the new Copy Catchers also really don't make the final list. They all do things in the deck, for sure, but they just aren't impactful enough for us here to stay in. I like them in some situations, but here they're just not for us. Lastly, some of the smaller one-time Surveil cards can go. They're cluttering up the deck a bit. Consider Curate and Afara's Dispersal all have their uses, but they aren't here. If we were more focused on spell slinging, absolutely. But these basically say put a +1/+1 counter on Mirko, draw a card in a lot of the cases. For the same reason, we can cut Discovery Dispersal. The mode we're using here more often than not is just to Surveil 2 and draw a card, but that's sorcery speed, and we just cut better instant speed options. Dispersal is okay, but for 5 mana there are much better things we could be doing. This leaves us with a much slicker brew, focusing around reanimating creatures and potentially cloning the best things on the battlefield, every turn, for free. I like the sounds of that. The Surveil theme remains strong, but it's more focused on filling our graveyard than specifically triggering Mirko. But what if we want to adapt the deck around Marvo? How do we take advantage of our slippery little octopus and his clashing habits? Let's reset the deck list back to default and take a look. My first instinct was to clash as much as possible. Marvo triggers whenever you win any clash, not just his. Unfortunately, every other method of clashing in blue and black is one time on instants, sorceries, or enter the battlefield effects. Paperfin Rascal, Pulling Teeth, and Scattering Stroke are all potential options, but then you're putting some pretty mediocre cards in your deck, and I'm not a big fan of that. However, there are 2 repeatable sources of clash, and you may not like it. The first is Research the Deep, a simple sorcery for 2 mana. You draw a card and clash. If you succeeded the clash though, you return it to your hand. That helps fill our mitts with spells and lets us cast them with Marvo. The second is Captivating Glance. It's an aura that says, at the beginning of your end step, clash with an opponent. If you win, gain control of enchanted creature. Otherwise, that player gains control of enchanted creature. So you'll always clash at the end of your turn, but there's a chance you'll be sending the enchanted creature back and forth between you and an opponent. Unless we can game the system and always win clashes. But how would we do that? Many are instantly going to think of top deck manipulation like Sensei's Divining Top. That's a good option if you've got cash to spare, but for many upgrading this precon, it's a lot to ask. Soothsaying, at just $1.50, lets us pay X and dig deep, and put the highest mana value card on top of our libraries. This can work wonders when we know we'll be clashing repeatedly, as we will have the mana that we won't be spending on spells in favor of casting them for free by winning clashes. Cards that let us look at the top card of our library at any time, like Vezovan Drifter or the Reality Chip, give us the option of clashing and knowing the chance of our success. Combined with some card draw or surveil elements, we could be ditching the chaff off the top of our decks to give us the best chances at winning a clash. But really, the biggest question is, if you can cast anything, mana value 8 or less for free, what are you casting? Personally, I want to juice the mana values in this deck and include fun big creatures like Astral Dragon, making multiple copies of other permanents we control when it enters the battlefield. Imagine making 2 3/3 Soul Rings for free. That's awesome! Hoarding Broodlord is another fantastic budget option as well, allowing us to tutor up a card when we cast him for free, while also giving us the passive benefit of spells cast from exile having Convoke. A 7/6 flyer for free? Amazing. A 7/6 flyer for free that brings along friends? Better. Dig Through Time is a great addition too, because not only is it a big cast when you get to cast it for free, but it's reasonable if you need to delve away some cards and cast it the hard way. Well, the medium way at least. I also like spells like Elminster's Simulacrum. While it has a mana value of 6, it can easily be getting you much more value in terms of the creatures you're copying with it. The best stuff your opponents have? You've got them too, potentially for free. Who can refuse that? Heck, you could also peer into the abyss for free with Marvo as well, either drawing half your library or forcing an opponent to. This may just nuke someone out of the game, or ensure you've got every resource ever at your own fingertips. That'll make a game easy fast. But the big question is, if we're upping the big mana spells in the deck so that we have a better chance of winning clashes and more bombs to cast for free, what are we removing? Normally, I like keeping my mana curve low, but this deck is all about big mana value and cheating big spells, so let's work to cut some of these smaller spells and some of the spells that fall above the 8 mana value limit Marvo sets for us. This automatically disqualifies Connive Concoct, as split cards have a combined mana value. In this case, a whopping 9 mana for what was already just an okay spell. Unfortunately, Rise of the Dark Realms at 9 mana as well means it's not getting cast for free and we should cut it too. A shame, it's a game ender, but who wants to cast spells fairly? Certainly not me and certainly not in this deck. As much as I like the surveil aspect here to ensure we can get the clash-winning cards to be on top of our decks, small spells like Consider, Otherworldly Gaze, and Curate all bring the curve down considerably, and we should cut them. But a card like Brainstorm absolutely stays in. We can fix our clashes so the biggest spell is on top of our deck, and is an easy way to win spells for free. Smaller, surveil-focused creatures like Thoughtbound Phantasm, Copy Catchers, and Dimir Spybug should get cut too. They don't trigger off of what we're focusing on, and would likely not get us to the level of use or value that comes from just getting our average mana value up. Whispering Snitch is likely another cut. It's a low mana value card and only cares about surveilling, which isn't the vibe here. And of course, Ransom Note can go. I don't like this card, can you tell? I've cut it from every Precon and every upgrade. It's an easy axe to bring up our average mana value and utility significantly. This now brings the average mana value to almost 4, which is a whole point higher than the average I usually build decks around. This wants high mana values though, and serves well to have a few flexible spells that are high mana value but can be cast for less, like Hoarding Broodlord and Pile On with Convoke or Dig Through Time's Delve. It's all about versatility, team! But these swaps give us some bigger payoffs, more free value for Marvo's triggers, and a few more ways to get multiple triggers too. Imagine casting 2 to 3 spells for free per turn with a few Clash enablers. That seems so good. Now, you tell me which of these lists you like better. Mirko's Reanimation Engine with a heavy dose of Surveil, or Marvo's Free Spell Marathon, casting big bombs for free each turn. And if I missed any must-have cards that you want to see in the list, be sure to share them in the comments. I'm sure everyone's looking for juicy hits to upgrade their decks. If you want to check out the full deck list along with my upgrades, check out my sponsor, Moxfield. Moxfield is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to review ads and cuts with the history feature. While you're there, be sure to check out my profile and follow me. And while you're here, be sure to watch these other Murders at Karlov Manor brews. If you were inspired to build today, you have to hit that subscribe button. And as always, folks, good luck and have fun.